Syrians and Roborovskis are both species of hamster, but they are very different to each other and therefore very different to own as pets. In this video, I'm going to talk through their differences to help you decide which one is most suitable for you. Whilst I love all species of hamster, there is a reason I'm making this video about Roborovskis and Syrians. Syrians are the largest species of captive hamsters and Roborovskis are the smallest. I often hear size being used as the deciding factor between the two, but there is so much more to both of them. I also have experience with both species and I think that they are very different to own and care for as pets. If you'd like to learn more about each hamster in the wild, which will provide you with some background to their natural behaviours, I have a video on each which I will link below this video. And I want to preface this video by saying that I love both Roborovskis and Syrians equally, so this is in no way a biased video. Okay, so what are they like to own as pets? The appearance of the two hamsters is very different. Syrians typically grow to about 5 to 7 inches in length and Roborovskis 2 to 3 inches in length, so much smaller. The size of the hamsters does make for different experiences in caring for them. Something that people often say in relation to the size of the two hamsters is that Roborovskis are smaller, so they can therefore have a smaller enclosure. And this could not be more wrong. Actually, all hamsters should have an enclosure that is a minimum of 100 by 50 by 50 centimetres. So even if pet shops say it, don't get a small enclosure just because you have chosen a Roborovski hamster. Likewise, you don't want to get your Roborovski a tiny wheel just because they are small. No hamster should have to run on a wheel. That means that their back is curved as they are running, as this is very bad for them. And if you think about it, in the wild, they would be running along desert terrain and their back would be straight. Having a larger wheel means that the hamster can control the speed of it better, which means they won't be flipping over and falling out. This is horrible and should be avoided at all costs, even though it is sometimes showcased on disgusting YouTube channels as something that's funny to watch. Obviously, their size would also affect how much they eat and drink, so the portions should be adjusted accordingly. If you are going to let your hamsters free roam, Roborovskis are so small that they can very easily fit through small gaps and into very tight spaces. So there's a little bit more chance of losing a Roborovski than a Syrian. Another aspect of interaction that's important to highlight is that Roborovskis can be very stressed out by being left to free roam or put into a run. Often they prefer to stay in their enclosure, whereas Syrians generally seem to enjoy coming out of their enclosure to explore a different area. Roborovskis can be touch-me-not pets for those who like to observe an animal but don't want to interact as much. However, as I said, it is possible to tame them and I have a 3-part series on this if you are interested. Okay, let's talk about enclosures and setup and how this will need to vary depending on whether you have a Roborovski or a Syrian. Roborovskis love sand, so you will need to provide your Robo with as much sand as possible. This to them is a natural environment. They like to dig in sand, they will bury their food in sand, they will bathe in sand by rolling in it. Syrians should also have access to sand, which they may use to bathe in or may use it as their bathroom area. But for Robos, it's very, very important that they have as much sand as possible. All hamsters burrow, so deep bedding is a must for any species. This will allow your hamsters to burrow and create food chambers and sleeping chambers. Something that's worth noting is that because Syrians are a lot bigger than Roborovskis, when you build up the bedding in the enclosure, just make sure that your Syrian can't reach the top of your enclosure from the top of their bedding and escape the enclosure. This means you might want a deeper enclosure for, let's say, 30 centimetres depth of bedding than you would need for a Roborovski. Speaking of Syrians potentially escaping, this is another difference. Syrians can be relentless at trying to escape from their enclosure, whereas Roborovskis far less so. Obviously, any hamster with limited space and enrichment will be unhappy and exhibit signs of stress, some of which can include trying to escape from their enclosure. However, Syrians are far more likely to succeed at this. They are bigger, they are better at gnawing wood, and are generally a lot more Houdini-like than Roborovskis. Whilst Robos can of course escape too, they are a lot more dainty in their approach and therefore less likely to succeed. For Syrians, you will want to check the strength and the thickness of the wooden enclosure to make sure they can't gnaw their way through. Good pet shops, such as Roborovski, for example, will also say if their enclosure is not suitable for a Syrian or a long-haired Syrian or a female Syrian, all of which can be more aggressive in their attempts to escape. So look out for any descriptions as well. Roborovskis are so small that you can't really hold them other than letting them sit on the palm of your hand, or at least have to be very careful doing so. Syrians are generally more interactive with humans than Roborovskis are. As I say, this isn't always the case, but it is more likely that you will be able to interact and handle your Syrian than you will your Roborovski. Roborovskis can be shyer and more skittish. However, I do believe that you can work with either species to gain trust and develop that relationship and bond. And there are, of course, always exceptions. I have had very, very friendly, sociable Roborovskis. All of the Syrians that I've had have been very friendly and sociable. But if the Syrian that you have is not used to being handled or has had a bad start in life, they might be more difficult to interact with. Next, let's talk about speed. Roborovskis are extremely fast and can be more challenging to handle. Because of their speed, Roborovskis can seem more unpredictable than Syrians. One minute they're doing one thing and the next minute they're gone. To them it's obviously a normal speed, but to us it can seem extremely fast. Any hamster should not be picked up at a height where they could easily fall and be injured. But with Roborovskis, this is even more important because they are so fast. It can be challenging even for the most experienced of handlers to keep up with their antics. If they suddenly decide to go, you want to make sure that they aren't going to shoot off your hand and drop from a height. Syrians can also be fast and can also be unpredictable, but generally they are slower and they're easier to handle. So now let's talk about health. Obviously, hamsters, whatever their species, can have pre-existing health conditions and bad starts in life due to bad breeding or poor conditions. Despite being small, Roborovskis can be pretty resilient and strong. They are less likely to get wet tail than Syrians. Wet tail is one of the main causes of deaths in hamsters. It's a watery diarrhea that can cause extreme pain and severe dehydration in hamsters, and it needs to be treated very, very quickly when it first occurs, but it can also be quite hard to treat. It can sadly lead very quickly to death. You can obviously research this, but the point that I'm making here is that Roborovskis are less likely to get wet tail. Roborovskis and Syrians are also both far less prone to diabetes than other captive species of hamster. Roborovskis are not prone to any inheritable disease in particular as a species. You can actually find research studies into hamsters and prone health conditions if you're interested in looking into this further. I hope you found this video helpful if you are considering a Roborovski or a Syrian. If you want to learn more about either species, I will link videos about Syrians in the wild and Roborovskis in the wild below this video. I will also link a what you need for your Roborovski in 2024 video and the Handling Your Roborovski series. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell to support my channel, and I will see you in the next video.